"It was just a mistake," my mother pleaded, as my little girl's scream ripped through the cold Colorado air. Lily's tiny hand was still pinned under the SUV's front tire, her face pale, lips trembling. My niece, Chloe, stood there smirking, and my sister, Samantha, laughed from the driver's seat. "It's just a scratch. Put some cream on it and stop being dramatic," she called, as if my daughter's agony was a joke. My father, Richard, strolled over, shaking his head. "Some kids just overreact to small injuries." But when Dr. Karen Mitchell, the hand surgeon, saw Lily's x-rays, her eyes narrowed. "These aren't just today's injuries," she said. "I'm calling Detective Laura Brooks." That's when Samantha's smirk vanished. "My name is Hannah Miller, and this is the story of how my family's years of cruelty finally caught up with them, and how one terrible day shattered their perfect facade. I never planned on coming back to Colorado. For 3 beautiful years, Lily and I had been building a quiet life in Portland, Oregon. I worked as a medical receptionist at a small clinic, rented a cozy apartment, and spent weekends at the park or painting with Lily at the kitchen table. She was shy but sweet. With big hazel eyes and hair she insisted on braiding herself every morning. We had our routines, our little traditions. We were happy. Then, last winter, everything fell apart. The clinic downsized, and I lost my job. At first, I told myself it was temporary, that I'd find something else in a week or 2. But weeks turned into months. My savings evaporated, and the bills piled up. I sold my car to cover rent. I skipped meals so Lily could eat. Still, it wasn't enough. I was staring at an eviction notice one rainy morning when my phone rang. It was my mother, Margaret. Her voice was unusually warm, too warm. She said she and my father, Richard, had just bought a large house outside Denver with a small apartment above the garage. "It's perfect for you and Lily," she said. "Just until you get back on your feet." My gut twisted. Growing up, my parents had been masters of favoritism and cruelty. Ethan, my older brother, was the golden boy who could do no wrong. Samantha was the favorite daughter, sharp-tongued, entitled, rewarded for her meanness. And me? I was the family scapegoat. If something went wrong, it was somehow my fault. I'd left that world behind for a reason. But desperation is a dangerous thing. The thought of Lily sleeping in a shelter because of my pride was unbearable. Against every instinct I had, I agreed. We arrived in Colorado on a chilly March morning. The apartment above the garage was little more than a converted storage space. Barely any heat, no air conditioning, plumbing that rattled and groaned with every flush. When I mentioned the problems, Richard smirked and said, "Beggars can't be choosers." Margaret sighed dramatically about how some people were never satisfied. At first, I tried to believe it was temporary discomfort. But the real problem wasn't the apartment, it was the way they treated Lily. From the moment we moved in, Chloe, Samantha's daughter, became the star of the house. She got new toys, trips to the zoo, and ice cream for dinner. Lily, just 2 years younger, was told she was too little to join in, or that activities were family time. Chloe called her names, broke her toys, and most disturbingly started finding ways to hurt her. Whenever Lily cried, Samantha rolled her eyes. "She's too sensitive," Richard called her, soft. Margaret told me I was raising a child who couldn't handle the real world. And each time I defended my daughter, I was accused of being ungrateful. I should have left then. I should have trusted that gut-deep warning I'd felt the moment my mother called. But I told myself I just needed a few more weeks to save up. To find a job, I told myself Lily could handle it. I was wrong. The problems started almost immediately, but at first, they were easy to dismiss. Little comments, small slights, things I told myself I could overlook. Whenever Samantha came over, she'd make a show of organizing cousin activities for Chloe and Ethan's twin boys, Noah and Lucas. Trips to the trampoline park, movie nights with popcorn and blankets, baking cookies in the kitchen. Lily would stand in the doorway, clutching her stuffed bunny, and ask if she could join. "This is for real family," Chloe would say with a grin, glancing at her mother for approval. Samantha would smirk and shrug, like it was all just harmless teasing. I started to notice a pattern. Whenever Lily was allowed to play, Chloe made sure she got hurt. A playful shove that sent Lily tumbling into the coffee table. a sudden yank on her braid that made her cry out. When I confronted Samantha, she laughed. Girls' roughhouse. Lily needs to toughen up. My parents didn't just ignore it, they encouraged it. Margaret would call Chloe strong and spirited. Richard would chuckle and say, better she learns now than later. Then came the accidents that targeted Lily's hands. Chloe slammed her fingers in a door once, claiming she didn't see her there. Another time, I caught Chloe stomping on Lily's hand during a game of King of the Hill in the backyard. Every time I tried to address it, I was met with the same script. She's fine. She's dramatic. You're overreacting. The worst part was how quickly Lily started to believe them. She stopped coming to me when she was hurt, brushing off bruises as no big deal. She'd hide her hands in her sleeves when they were swollen, like she was embarrassed. I began keeping a journal. At first, it was just for my own sanity, a way to remind myself that I wasn't imagining things. But the more I wrote, the more I realized the incidents were piling up. Dates, descriptions, even direct quotes from my family. I started taking photos of Lily's hands when they were bruised or scratched. I didn't know it yet, but that journal would become the most important thing I'd ever own. By the 5th month of living there, Lily had become quieter, more withdrawn. She barely ate at dinner, spoke in a whisper around Samantha, and avoided Chloe entirely. At night, I'd hear her tossing in bed, whimpering in her sleep. When I asked if she was having nightmares, she'd say no, but her eyes told me otherwise. The breaking point came one Saturday in late September. Samantha announced she was taking Chloe and the twins to the new indoor adventure park. Lily stood at the window as they loaded into Samantha's SUV. Why can't I go? She asked. I couldn't tell her the truth that her aunt was cruel, and her grandparents didn't see her as family, so I said, maybe we'll go together another time. Just us. They came back less than an hour later, saying the park was too crowded. I thought maybe this was Lily's chance to be included. She ran to the kitchen, peeking out at the backyard where the kids were setting up cones and jump ropes. Can I play? She asked through the open door. No, Chloe shot back. This is family time. Margaret chuckled from the sink. She knows what she wants, she said of Chloe. Like it was a compliment, Lily slumped onto the porch steps, watching them laugh and run around. And then Samantha had an idea that would change everything. Let's play the driving game, she said. I'll drive through the course and you can run alongside the car. Even from the kitchen, I felt my chest tighten. It was reckless, dangerous. I started toward the door, but Richard caught my arm. Let Samantha handle her own kids, he said. Not everything needs your input. I froze, heart pounding, watching through the glass as Samantha backed the SUV out of the garage, music blaring, kids squealing. Lily stood up slowly, hope flickering in her eyes. I should have gone outside. I should have stopped it right then. But I didn't know the next few minutes would haunt me for the rest of my life. From the kitchen window, I watched Samantha roll the SUV slowly toward the starting line of the makeshift obstacle course. Chloe and the twins bounced with excitement, ready to run alongside the car. Lily took a small step forward, her hands twisting nervously in the hem of her sweater. Can I play too? She asked, her voice barely louder than the hum of the engine. We already told you no, Chloe snapped. This is family time. I saw Lily's lip tremble, but instead of retreating, she moved toward the group just a few small steps, hesitant but hopeful. She positioned herself near Chloe, maybe thinking she could slip into the game unnoticed. That's when it happened. Chloe's eyes flicked toward Lily, and a smirk curled at the corner of her mouth. As Samantha turned the wheel to begin the slow circuit, Chloe shoved Lily hard at just the right angle. Time seemed to slow. Lily stumbled forward, her right hand shooting out instinctively to break her fall. The front tire rolled over it with a sickening, muffled crunch. The sound wasn't loud, but it tore through me like a gunshot. Lily's scream wasn't even a scream, it was a high, keening wail, a sound that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her, raw and animal. Her eyes locked on mine through the window, wide, wet, and terrified. I dropped the dish I was holding and bolted for the door, shouting, "Get off her hand! Back up the car!" But Samantha didn't move. She sat in the driver's seat, one elbow resting casually on the window frame, and laughed. It wasn't the nervous, shocked kind of laugh you hear when people don't know how to react. It was cruel, deliberate, enjoying the show. "It's just a scratch," she called out, her voice dripping with mockery. "Put some cream on it and stop being dramatic." Chloe stood next to the tire, close enough to see exactly what was happening, and she was smirking. Richard jogged over but didn't help, just shook his head and muttered, "Some kids overreact to small injuries." Margaret's voice floated toward me. "It was just a mistake." "Just a mistake?" My daughter's small hand was trapped under hundreds of pounds of metal, her fingers twisted in unnatural angles, blood already seeping through her skin. "Move the car now!" I screamed, my voice cracking. Samantha didn't even flinch. She held my gaze for a long, chilling moment, like she was testing how far she could push me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she reversed the SUV a few feet. I dropped to my knees beside Lily. Her hand was mangled, 2 fingers bent backward, skin split, blood pooling in her palm. She was gasping for air, her face pale, and her body trembling. I could see she was slipping into shock. I scooped her into my arms. "I'm taking her to the ER," I said, my voice shaking but cold with rage. Behind me, Samantha had the audacity to sigh and say she ran in front of the car. What was I supposed to do? Margaret followed us to the driveway, still muttering about how these things happen when children don't listen. Richard added, "Maybe this will teach her to follow directions." I slammed the car door and drove like my life depended on it. In a way, it did. At the ER, the triage nurse took one look at Lily's hand and whisked us into a treatment room. Within minutes, Dr. Karen Mitchell was by our side, calm but focused. She examined Lily gently, asking her questions in a soothing voice. Then she ordered X-rays. When the results came back, Dr. Mitchell's demeanor changed. She asked me to step into a small consultation room. Her tone was careful, deliberate. "These injuries are severe," she began. "But what concerns me is that the X-rays show evidence of multiple older fractures in her hands and wrists, injuries in various stages of healing." My stomach lurched. "That's not possible. She's never..." Dr. Mitchell turned the monitor toward me. "Hairline fractures, healed breaks, damage I couldn't explain. These are consistent with repeated crushing or pinching injuries," she said gently. "I'm required to notify law enforcement." A cold wave washed over me. All those accidents, the bruises I photographed, the way Lily sometimes cradled her hands after playing with Chloe. I'd seen it all, but I hadn't seen it. "I'm calling Detective Laura Brooks," Dr. Mitchell said, standing, and that's when I realized the accident in the driveway wasn't the beginning. It was the end of a long, deliberate campaign of cruelty. Detective Laura Brooks arrived at the hospital less than an hour later. She was in her late 40s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing, and a calm, steady voice that somehow made me feel both exposed and supported. She introduced herself, then asked to speak with me in private. Richard immediately stepped in. "This is a family matter," he said, his voice firm. "There's no need for police involvement," Margaret added, shaking her head. Detective Brooks looked at them without blinking. "Ma'am, sir, I will be speaking with everyone individually, starting with Lily's mother." She led me into a small consultation room. Her questions were precise. How long had we been living with my parents? What was Lily's relationship with Samantha and Chloe? Had there been other injuries? I told her everything, the favoritism, the exclusion, the way Chloe always seemed to hurt Lily when adults were watching. I handed her the journal I'd been keeping, with photographs and dates. She flipped through it slowly, making careful notes. "Do you have any idea how these previous fractures occurred?" she asked. I swallowed hard. I didn't understand until now. But yes, I think I know. Next, she spoke to Lily. My daughter was groggy from pain medication, but she managed to answer some questions. When Detective Brooks asked if anyone had hurt her hands before, Lily nodded faintly and whispered, "Chloe." Then came the interviews with my family. Through the glass walls of the consultation rooms, I could see everything. Margaret cried dramatically, dabbing at her eyes. Richard looked annoyed, glancing at his watch as if he had somewhere more important to be. Samantha leaned back in her chair, calm and confident, as if she were the victim of an overblown misunderstanding. But Chloe was different. She looked scared, shifting in her seat, eyes darting around the room. Later, I would learn exactly what she told Detective Brooks. Children her age haven't mastered lying under pressure. In her childish voice, she described the games she played with Lily, stepping on her hands, slamming them indoors, seeing how long she could make her cry without getting caught. She even bragged that the adults laughed because Lily was so dramatic. She had no idea she was confessing to months of abuse. When Detective Brooks returned to me, her expression was grim. "Ms. Miller," she said, "your daughter has been the victim of systematic abuse by multiple family members. The evidence is overwhelming: the medical records, your documentation, and the child's testimony. I am placing your parents and your sister under arrest for child abuse, neglect, and aggravated assault. Additional charges will follow." I felt like the air had been punched out of me. Part relief, part devastation. The arrests happened right there in the hospital waiting room. Samantha's smirk evaporated when the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. Margaret wailed about misunderstandings. Richard demanded to call his lawyer, his face twisted in disbelief. And Chloe, for the first time since we'd moved in, she didn't look smug. She looked like an 8-year-old who had just realized actions have consequences. Ethan arrived about an hour later, still in his work clothes. When Detective Brooks explained what had happened, his face went pale. "I had no idea," he said quietly, and for the first time in years, I believed him. After the arrests, everything moved fast, at least at first. Detective Brooks arranged for Ethan to take Chloe home and for Lily and me to be transferred to Denver Children's Hospital for surgery. Dr. Karen Mitchell met us in the surgical prep room. She explained that Lily's hand had multiple fresh fractures, plus some that hadn't healed properly from earlier injuries. She would need pins and screws to stabilize the bones and months of physical therapy afterward. "Will she regain full use of her hand?" I asked. Dr. Mitchell hesitated. "Most of it, but there may be some permanent stiffness in a few fingers. The important thing is, she's young. She can adapt." Lily's surgery lasted nearly 4 hours. I paced the waiting room the entire time, clutching my journal like a lifeline. Every so often, I'd glance toward the hallway where my parents and Samantha had been led away in handcuffs earlier. The image replayed in my mind like a scene from a film I still couldn't believe I was in. When Dr. Mitchell finally came out, she smiled gently. "She's in recovery. She did great." Relief flooded through me so fast I had to sit down. The legal process was another story. My parents and Samantha hired expensive lawyers, claiming the whole thing was a tragic misunderstanding, and that I was a vindictive daughter making false accusations. But the evidence was too strong. Lily's medical records, showing a pattern of untreated injuries. My dated journal entries with direct quotes. Chloe's initial statement to Detective Brooks. And, most damning, the security footage from the hospital showing their cold, dismissive reactions to Lily's injury. While the criminal case moved forward, I filed for a civil suit to cover Lily's medical bills, therapy, and future care. Ethan, to my surprise, backed me completely. He even testified about seeing Chloe mimic Samantha's cruel remarks toward Lily in the past. In the weeks that followed, Lily began physical therapy. She was quiet, still startled easily, and clung to me whenever we were in public. But there were small signs of progress: the way her eyes lit up when she was able to hold a crayon again, the tiny smile when her therapist praised her for completing an exercise. We moved into a short-term rental near the hospital, paid for by victim assistance funds. For the first time in months, Lily had her own space without fear of Chloe bursting in to snatch her toys or hurt her. She slept through the night. She laughed softly at first, then louder. The first court date came 6 weeks after the arrests. Samantha appeared in a tailored suit, her hair perfectly styled, but her eyes darted nervously around the courtroom. My parents sat stiffly, refusing to look at me. The prosecutor outlined the charges: child abuse and neglect for Richard and Margaret, aggravated assault, child endangerment, and conspiracy for Samantha. When the judge read the list aloud, I felt my knees go weak. Hearing it framed in legal terms stripped away any lingering denial. This wasn't family drama. This was calculated cruelty against a child. By the end of that day, the judge denied bail for Samantha, citing the seriousness of the charges and the clear risk to Lily. My parents were released on strict conditions: no contact with minors, including Lily. Walking out of the courthouse, I held Lily's good hand in mine. She looked up at me and asked, "Are we safe now?" It broke me that she had to ask that at all. But I bent down, kissed her forehead, and said, "Yes, baby, we're safe." I thought I already knew the worst of it. I was wrong. 2 months after the arrests, Detective Brooks called me into her office. She said the prosecutors had new evidence from the search of my parents' house. I braced myself, but nothing could have prepared me for what she showed me. First was a manila folder found in Samantha's old bedroom, now her makeshift office when visiting. Written in black marker on the cover, "Lily's accidents." Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Lily's small hands swollen and bruised. Lily crying at the kitchen table, struggling to hold a fork. Lily with a crayon slipping from her grasp because her fingers were too stiff to grip it. Each picture was dated. Each one was deliberate. My stomach turned as Detective Brooks explained that these photos had been taken over months, documenting injuries like trophies. Then came the text messages. A group chat between Samantha, Margaret, and Richard. The messages weren't just casual cruelty, they were strategic. Samantha bragged, "Little princess cried for an hour after I accidentally stepped on her hand today. So dramatic, just like her mother." Margaret responded with laughing emojis. "She needs to toughen up. Life's not going to coddle her." Richard chimed in with links to medical articles about injuries that don't show up well on X-rays, and ways to cause pain without leaving obvious marks. I couldn't breathe. They had been planning this, perfecting it, treating my daughter's pain like some twisted science experiment. The prosecutors immediately added conspiracy charges against Samantha, and the evidence strengthened the case against my parents. As part of the trial preparation, the court ordered psychological evaluations. Dr. Reynolds, a forensic psychologist, later sat down with me to explain the results. "My parents," he said, "exhibited strong narcissistic traits. They had created a rigid hierarchy in the family, where one member, the scapegoat, absorbed all the blame, criticism, and cruelty. For years that had been me. But when I moved away and limited contact, they simply transferred the role to Lily." Samantha's evaluation was worse. Dr. Reynolds described traits consistent with sadistic personality disorder, someone who not only enjoys causing pain, but derives a sense of power from it. She wasn't lashing out impulsively. She was orchestrating Lily's suffering for her own gratification. And Chloe? She had been coached. Praise for hurting Lily, rewards for making her cry. Statements like, "If she cries, you win," had turned cruelty into a game in her young mind. Dr. Reynolds' report was blunt. This was not an isolated act of abuse. This was a coordinated, sustained campaign designed to inflict maximum harm while avoiding detection. The adults involved demonstrated no remorse and justified their actions as discipline or family bonding. I walked out of that meeting shaking, my hands cold even in the warm spring air. I had known my family was capable of cruelty, but I had never imagined they could take it this far, meticulously planning how to hurt a 6-year-old child, turning her into the new family punching bag because I wasn't available to fill that role anymore. That night, I sat with Lily while she colored at the kitchen table. Her drawings were brighter, now more sunshine and flowers, but every so often, I noticed the way she still guarded her hands, tucking them into her lap when she wasn't using them. And I promised myself, no matter how long the court process took, no matter how much they tried to twist the truth, I would see this through to the end. The trial began 8 months after the arrests. By then, Lily's hand had healed enough for her to hold a pencil again, but she still struggled with certain movements. She was nervous about court, but the victim advocate explained that she wouldn't have to sit in the same room as Samantha or my parents. She could testify via a closed-circuit camera. The courtroom was cold, all dark wood and fluorescent lighting. Margaret and Richard sat together at the defense table, their posture rigid. Samantha was seated beside them, perfectly dressed, her hair pulled into a sleek bun, her expression flat. They looked like a united front until the evidence started coming in. The prosecution opened with the medical records, projected onto a large screen for the jury to see. X-rays showed fresh fractures, older breaks, and untreated injuries. "Doctor," Mitchell testified about the improbability of these injuries being accidents, describing them as consistent with repeated crushing and twisting forces. Then came the photographs from Samantha's folder. Each image was shown, one by one. Every time Lily's bruised, swollen hands appeared on the screen, the courtroom grew quieter. You could feel the discomfort radiating from the jury box. The text messages hit hardest. When the prosecutor read aloud Richard's comment about hurting without leaving marks, a juror audibly gasped. Samantha shifted in her seat but didn't look away. Margaret kept dabbing her eyes with a tissue, but her tears seemed oddly timed, always appearing when the jury's attention turned toward her. Lily's testimony was short but powerful. Sitting in a small room with the victim advocate beside her, she answered questions in her soft voice. "Who hurt your hands?" the prosecutor asked. "Chloe," she said. "And who told Chloe to do that?" "My Aunt Samantha." "Did anyone else know?" "My grandma and grandpa." They laughed. The defense tried to paint me as a bitter daughter seeking revenge, claiming I had manipulated Lily, but the prosecutor dismantled that quickly, pointing out that the evidence, the photos, the messages, the medical history existed long before I ever contacted police. When it was my turn to speak, I read my victim impact statement. My hands shook, but my voice was steady. "You turned my daughter's pain into entertainment," I told them. "You broke her bones, her trust, and for months, you made her believe she deserved it. You will never again have the chance to hurt her or anyone else." After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for less than 5 hours. The verdicts were read aloud. Samantha: guilty on all counts, aggravated assault, child abuse, conspiracy, and endangerment. Margaret and Richard: guilty of felony child abuse, neglect, and conspiracy. Sentencing took place a month later. The judge's voice was firm, almost unforgiving, as she addressed the defendants. "This court has rarely seen such calculated cruelty toward a child. Your actions were not the result of stress or poor judgment. They were intentional, sustained, and sadistic." Then came the sentences. Samantha: 25 years in state prison, no possibility of parole for the first 18. Margaret: 15 years. Richard: 17 years. There was no dramatic outburst. Samantha stared straight ahead, her jaw tight. Margaret wept quietly. Richard muttered something under his breath, but the bailiff was already leading them away. Afterward, the prosecutor shook my hand. "You did right by Lily," she said. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and relief. Justice had been served, but the scars, both physical and emotional, would take far longer to heal. Lily skipped a little as we crossed the parking lot, her small hand warm in mine. "Does this mean they can't hurt me anymore?" she asked. "No, sweetheart," I said, squeezing her hand. "They'll never hurt you again," and for the first time in a long time I truly believed it. Life after the trial didn't magically fall into place. There were no balloons, no happily ever after moment. Healing, I learned, was slow work, quiet, messy, and full of small steps. We stayed in the rental house near Denver for almost a year. It was nothing special, 2 bedrooms, creaky floors, a backyard that needed more grass, but it was ours. No one barged into Lily's room without knocking. No one mocked her for crying. No one kept a tally of her accidents. Lily's physical therapy sessions became a routine. Twice a week, we'd sit in the waiting room while she worked with her therapist, stretching and strengthening her hand. She was determined, her brow furrowing in concentration as she pushed through the exercises. The day she could button her own coat again, she ran into my arms, beaming, her voice bright. "I did it all by myself." School was harder. At first, she was shy and hesitant, wary of other children. But her teacher, Mrs. Harper, was patient, pairing her with kind, gentle classmates. Slowly, Lily began to laugh again, real laughter, not the guarded kind I'd heard in my parents' house. For me, the adjustment was just as complex. I went back to work part-time, but the rest of my energy went into creating a safe, predictable world for Lily. I learned to recognize my own triggers, the way my chest tightened when I heard footsteps behind a closed door, or the way my voice shook when someone raised theirs in frustration. Therapy helped. My counselor, Dr. Lee, reminded me that breaking the cycle of abuse wasn't just about protecting Lily from my family. It was about unlearning the beliefs they'd drilled into me for decades. That I was weak, that I overreacted, that I didn't deserve better. We didn't talk much about my parents or Samantha. Lily asked once, "Do you think they're sorry?" I told her the truth. "I don't know, but sorry doesn't erase what they did." She nodded, accepting that answer in a way only a child who's lived through too much can. Every few months, I'd get a letter from the Victim Services Office updating me on their incarceration status. The first time I opened one without shaking, I realized how far I'd come. We built new traditions: Saturday pancake breakfasts, Sunday trips to the library, painting our nails wild colors on Friday nights. None of it was expensive or complicated, but each moment was a brick in the safe foundation we were building together. On the 1-year anniversary of the trial's end, we visited the botanical gardens. Lily wore a yellow sundress, her hair loose around her shoulders. She ran ahead of me, stopping every few feet to point at a flower or chase a butterfly. I watched her move confident, unafraid, and felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. As the sun dipped low and the air cooled, Lily slipped her hand into mine. "We're okay now, aren't we?" she asked. I smiled. "Yes, baby. We're more than okay." We walked out of the gardens together, the path stretching ahead of us wide open, full of possibilities. And for the first time, the future didn't scare me. It felt like a gift.